I'd say the most intrigue surrounds what we have coming up tonight, 2 games on the network, and it includes the 2 teams that were involved on Sunday getting back out on the court.
It's kind of crazy. It's like when, someone makes a great catch in center field and he's the next man up, to hit. I feel like the big incident happened Sunday, and bam, they're both playing tonight on our air in their next game. For both teams, for Wisconsin, I see no effect. 0. I don't think there'll be any carryover from Sunday's incident. Jacoby Neath obviously won't play. Not a major factor for their game against Minnesota. But for Michigan, this is going to be by far their biggest test of the year because of who they're playing. Rutgers is a desperate team. No Moussa Diabate. He had 15 and 9 last time they played in a losing effort. So that's a big man that will have to come out of there. And look, we said this yesterday. Phil Martelli, 24 years at St. Joe's, got to the Elite Eight. I mean, he knows what he's doing. There's no issue there. It's just how will this team react? How will the crowd react? All those things will be a factor tonight.
We dive into it. It is our big story as we check out the matchups tonight. Wolverines' first game again without Juwan Howard at the helm. And it's Johnny Davis leading the 13th-ranked Badgers to the barn as they take on Minnesota. Andy and I will be here for the tip-off show with Rayfeld Davis starting at 6:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. So let's dive into a little bit of what you were talking about. First game without Juwan Howard for Michigan. As we know, it'll be the first of 5 here, the rest of the regular season. How big a distraction do you think this will be for these guys?
Okay, first of all, I want to clarify something we said yesterday because Michigan initially told me that he would have 0 contact. Phil Martelli in his news conference yesterday said that he can have contact, not physical, but he can be in contact with the staff and the players. So that is a nuanced difference that does make a difference.
Yeah.
Because he can obviously, potentially he could be on the phone and FaceTime in the locker room. Who knows how he will integrate himself into this, preparation and game. He just physically cannot be around the team during these 5 games in these final 2 weeks. So how much of a distraction? I do think that it's positive that they had Monday and Tuesday and then today's shoot-around to get adjusted to not having his voice. Phil Martelli in his news conference yesterday, it was interesting. He said, I don't sit down. There's a chair. Yes. I will not sit in it. And, he coaches differently. He will approach the officials differently. The substitution patterns I don't think necessarily will change dramatically, but he might have a different feel. We do know that Brandon Johns is going to play more because Moussa Diabate is out. And actually, Brandon Johns has had significant contributions before. As a veteran player, just got sort of leaped over, by Diabate. So I just don't think there will be dramatic coaching differences because Phil's been in this position before. And talking to him this morning, he said the key thing is pace, defensive rebounding, and making sure that when they take the shots, Michigan, that they're confident shots, that they're within their offense and they're quality shots, and don't play into Rutgers' hands in that regard.
It'd be hard to overstate how important it is to have someone with his veteran leadership. And this is a guy, you said it yesterday, and it's absolutely true. He spent a lot of time on the bubble in his life. So not only has he sat in that chair 24 years as a head coach, been within an eyelash of making it to the Final Four. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to navigate the ins and outs of big-time college basketball. But it's also someone who's been in this exact spot before, not with Michigan, but with St. Joe's. And I thought it was interesting. He opened his press conference yesterday by essentially saying, hey, I have done this before. Right. This is not going to be some sort of shock to my system. And I also thought, and you made this point where he said, hey, I'm going to stand up. I'm not going to sit down. He's going to be his own guy. He's not going to go out there and try to somehow emulate Juwan Howard. It's clear he has a ton of respect for Juwan and what Juwan has done at Michigan. But he is confident in who he is.
Yes.
This guy was a national coach of the year. I mean, this is not some Johnny-come-lately or someone who's going to be, eyes just wide open thinking, oh, my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? He knows exactly what he's doing.
So I'm going to flip it, though, in terms of Rutgers. I think it's critical for Rutgers to weather the early storm because I fully anticipate Chrysler's going to be rocking. They're going to rally around their team. They're going to feel that they were, somehow wronged, and no head coach, no two players. We're on the bubble. We're coming off this loss. I feel like this is going to be a very heated arena tonight. So Rutgers has to come in there anticipating that, just like teams anticipate that at the rack, and just take that punch and be ready to go right back at them.
Right, I'm with you. I think there is going to be a lot of emotion. I think from Martelli's point of view, you need to be a steadying presence, which I absolutely think he can be, right? Like the players need to be steadied, but the crowd could be totally raucous, and that works major in their favor, which I think is what you're getting at.
And here's a big difference between the two men is Martelli was never a coach to really get the crowd going.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, last night we saw UConn's Dan Hurley, he gets teed up after getting a tee because he's getting the crowd going. And Juwan has done that. Juwan's like, come on, let's go.
Right.
That's not Phil Martelli. I think all those peripheral things will be going on around him. He will be locked in to coaching this game.
How about Rutgers? They came back down to earth a little bit in that game against Purdue, although they really battled. We know prior to that they had won 4 straight. How's Rutgers feeling heading into this game?
Well, first of all, the great news was that Ron Harper Jr. played, because prior to that game, because of what happened in the previous game against Illinois, there was definitely concern with his hand injury that was he going to play? So that's a positive. I think the fact that they go from Sunday to Wednesday, a little time more to get healthy and get ready. But the thing for Rutgers is they just have to keep their eye locked in. They've done a great job of putting themselves in a position to get a bid. Now they've got to keep playing well, because all eyes are watching now. As much as the selection committee will say, every game counts and all that, they all have their day jobs. A lot of them are dealing with football for 3/4 of the year,
right?
And now they're all locked in, and people are going to be watching this game tonight, especially because of what happened with Michigan. So I think it's incumbent upon them to play well. They win. I still stay true to my belief that 12-8 is a lock for them. 11-9, I still think they're in. 10-10, because of their net and the baggage from the November losses, will make it tenuous for them. I'm convinced they get one more, they're going to be in, maybe their first 4, that kind of thing. I think they get to 12-8 because of how they would have to get to 12-8. I think they're comfortably in.
We'll get into a little bit more on the bubble talk coming up here, but
a little tease.
Again, it's a Rutgers team that has really played well here. They are second in the nation in offensive efficiency over the last 5 games. I mean, you think about where they were offensively at the beginning of the year and where they are now. I give a ton of the credit to Paul Mulcahy. He has improved by leaps and bounds, kind of running this offense, but they've got Geo Baker clicking now. Ron Harper Jr., as you said, you worried a little bit about that hand injury. He came back. Amori has emerged. Dean Reber coming off the bench. I mean, it just feels like it is so much more of a complete team than it was even 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, Geo Baker had a great game against Rutgers the last time. I think he went for 27.
Against Michigan,
Yeah, the last time they played Michigan.
Right.
So, if he can duplicate that, you're in a great position, no question about it. And Caleb McConnell is going to get up for this defensively, because talking about what Martelli said about good shots, McConnell is going to make life difficult for them to take those good shots. And in terms of Mulcahy, he's just playing better and better than he was even the last time. So if they can get Baker, Mulcahy, and Harper Jr. playing well on the perimeter, and then if Amori just can flush it anytime he gets it, Elastic Man, Stretch Armstrong, Inspector Gadget, you name it, he's so quick with how he finishes. As soon as he gets it, bam.
Right. Now, to your point, Rutgers played really well. They beat Michigan last month. They hit 11 threes in that game as well. Now, remember, they have never won in Ann Arbor, but I'm not sure.
Well, but they hadn't beaten Michigan either.
I was just going to say, they hadn't beaten Michigan before anywhere.
Yes.
And, of course, they beat them in Piscataway. Let's talk about Wisconsin. First game since the scuffle for them. You kind of touched on this. No Jacoby Neath, and this is nothing, not to say anything, belittle Jacoby Neath's contributions, but he is not as big a part of Wisconsin's team as Moussa Diabate, or he's more comparable, let's say, to Terrence Williams at Michigan, who's suspended. So it doesn't feel like that's going to have a huge effect on them. It seems to me, you seem to think essentially no effect at all on this Wisconsin team coming out of all of this craziness on Sunday.
No, I mean, most importantly for them is to play well. on the road to be consistent, because they've had those games where after a big win and then they come down a little bit.
Right.
Greg Gard told me this morning, more than anything, they're going to have to just rebound, play very well in the paint, and defend that three-point line. On the flip side for Minnesota, the good news, and we don't know this officially yet, but Ben Johnson told me this morning that they're hoping Peyton Willis will clear COVID protocols. And if that happens, then they're going to be at their full strength, which gives them obviously a great chance to win this game. And they also want to make life difficult, like everyone else does, for Johnny Davis, really crowd him inside and force him to get rid of it. And that means Brad Davidson is going to have to knock down shots, and he's obviously been a little erratic of late.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging because they are not a good defensive team, as we know. Now, their zone was fantastic against Northwestern, and then they shot the ball beautifully as well. This is a team that can really get going, and Wisconsin has struggled with opponents making shots on them. I mean, that has been a challenge at times for the Badgers this year. So, if Minnesota gets going and they're well over 50% against Northwestern, they're charged up. It's a rivalry game. All that kind of stuff gets people stoked in Minneapolis.
And second chance points will be key for Minnesota, because they're undersized inside, but they're going against a Wisconsin team. Tyler Wall is deceptively quick around the basket, but he's not your traditional big. But that means Chris Vogt, Ben Carlson, Stephen Krall, those kind of guys are going to have to play really well, I think, tonight for Wisconsin.
Interesting side note, the all-time series is tied at 104 wins apiece.
Yes, that was big news last night. We mentioned that last night.
You did mention
yes,
that last night. Did you mention that if Wisconsin wins, it would be the first time in nearly 50 years they've had the lead in the all-time series?
No, Mike Hall, you did not have that stat.
Huh. All right.
That's why,
well,
this is a big guy right here.
Well, just saying, I think it's interesting.
Yes,
right?
yes,
I mean,
yes.
think a half a century since they've had the lead in the series, and that could change tonight right here on these very airwaves.
I complimented him last night with that stat, but he obviously did not have the full stat.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he was setting it up.
Yes,
maybe he was saying, I know Dave's going to go with this one, right?
Yes.
I missed the whole. I'll have to go back and review the videotape. Going down the stretch in women's hoops, the last week of the regular season, and there are still 5 teams in contention for the title. Michigan, 3 conference losses. Ohio State, Maryland, Iowa, Indiana with 4. Michigan could clinch the title Thursday with a win, an Iowa loss at Rutgers, and an OSU loss against Penn State, though it's far more likely the title won't be decided until the regular season ends Sunday. And again, the Big Ten tourney starts 1 week from today in Indy. Meghan McKeown will be there, and she is here now to help us sort things out. Meghan, let us start with Iowa. I mean, what a week it was for them. 2 straight wins over Indiana. Caitlin Clark was outstanding. Monica Czinano announces she's coming back for a 5th year and then goes out and puts up a monster game. What do you make of the way the Hawkeyes are playing here down the stretch?
Iowa is simply winning games because they're playing Iowa basketball when it's at its best, which means that they're giving the ball and sharing it amongst multiple people. As impressive as Caitlin Clark has been when she is scoring 40 points and getting triple doubles, Iowa is at its best when Caitlin Clark is in a facilitating standpoint. Monica Czinano had 31 points, as you mentioned, in that win over Indiana the other day. Caitlin Clark only had 29, but 3 players scored in double figures. Iowa is finally starting to find some balance in its scoring, and that's why they've been so successful here down the stretch. Get this, if Iowa wins out, they clinch at least a share of the Big Ten title in the regular season, which is very impressive. But they put themselves in a very good position from the standpoint of being in a driver's seat situation to control a little bit of their destiny headed into Sunday against Michigan.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. They would win at least a share of the Big Ten title if they win out. They haven't won a share of the Big Ten title in the regular season since 2008, so it would be pretty significant, first time in 14 years for Iowa. You mentioned it should be an amazing atmosphere on Sunday. I mean, it was crazy for the Indiana game that they played in Iowa City. Now, Michigan has a home game with Michigan State. Before that game with Iowa, they lost in East Lansing earlier this year, although Michigan State, as we know, is a little bit hobbled right now. And then we have a rematch of the crazy game against Iowa that they won. So certainly challenging here for Michigan going forward. Do you think the Wolverines can win these 2, hold on, and win this title outright?
I do think Michigan is very capable of holding on to win the title outright. When Michigan is on, they are nearly unstoppable at times. And yes, they dropped 2 in a row to Michigan State and Northwestern earlier in the year. But keep in mind that Michigan is still playing without starting forward Leah Brown, who has been one of the top scorers on that team throughout her time in Ann Arbor. This Michigan team looks really good against Maryland. In fact, they won by double digits against the Terps, who, in my opinion, are a Sweet 16, even an Elite 8 team in our conference. So for Michigan to have to take care of business, they are in the pole position currently when it comes to Big Ten standings. If they win the next 2, then they can win the Big Ten outright, which would be massive for the Wolverines. But that's going to be, again, a massive game, must-see television between Michigan and Iowa come Sunday.
How amazing is it that we're going to see that game on the final day of the regular season? Ohio State has a comparatively easier schedule than some of those others down the stretch. How big a factor do you see the Buckeyes being in all this?
What's interesting is Ohio State's another team that has the chance to win the Big Ten, which, again, how can 5 teams possibly be in contention for a Big Ten title this late in the season is what I want to know. This is like the most dramatic conference in women's basketball right now that you're seeing from across the board. But Ohio State, as you mentioned, technically has the least hard schedule, but Penn State is a trap game. They're playing really well right now. And I see a team like a Michigan State who has knocked off Michigan before, and they've beat some of the top teams in our league. Like, Michigan State's really good. They are currently an NCAA tournament bubble team. So although the path to the end of the season and a potential share of the Big Ten title is in reach for Ohio State, it's not exactly going to be easy. But if the Buckeyes can start to turn people over the way they've done all season long and score at will, especially from beyond the arc, then the Buckeyes have put themselves in an excellent position to be cutting down some nets on Sunday. A
team that's playing really well. They've won 5 of their last 6. But Indiana and Maryland, they're playing Friday night in College Park. We've already talked about the Hoosiers and their struggles last week against Iowa. Maryland, as you mentioned, got beaten by Michigan. So both these teams kind of trying to get their footing back. How do you see that matchup playing out on Friday?
That's another massive matchup. It's going to be Indiana has to go on the road to Maryland to play that game. And both of these teams are still coming back from having players injured. Mackenzie Holmes is only going to be in about her 3rd or 4th game back for the Hoosiers. And for Maryland, Ashley Owusu finally got some time against Michigan earlier this week, but still no telling that she's going to be 100% on the floor, what we're used to seeing classic old school Ashley Owusu. So those 2 teams are still trying to figure out how to play with each other at this time of the season, simply because main keys on their offense have been injured and they haven't been able to play together. So, simply put, it's going to be a massive game for both teams. But from a seeding standpoint, headed into the Big Ten tournament, especially because those 2 are on the cusp of being 4 or 5. And if you're a top 4 seed in the Big Ten, you get that crucial double bye in the tournament. If you're that number 5 seed, you only get a 1-day bye. So both of those teams have their eyes on trying to get that 2-day bye headed into the Big Ten tournament.
Indiana did get the win earlier this year when they played in overtime in Bloomington. I do want to ask you before we let you go about Michigan State and Northwestern. 2 bubble teams. It feels like, again, Michigan State is so banged up that it's going to take everything they've got to figure out a way to get in. Northwestern is a true bubble team right now. I mean, they're in kind of that first 4 out category, I think, with a lot of people. What will it take for both of these teams to figure out a way to get in?
I think that if Michigan State can beat Ohio State, they have a good chance of solidifying a bid to the NCAA tournament. Northwestern has to win out. They play against Purdue on Thursday, then they have to play at Nebraska on Sunday, which is going to be possibly the biggest game of the year for the Cats. So if they can get a road win at Nebraska, I think the Cats could potentially sneak into the NCAA tournament from outside. But both of those teams just have to do what they do and control their own destiny moving forward from the standpoint of trying to win out before they start Big Ten tournament play.
A Northwestern team that, as we know, has already won in Iowa City this year, in addition to beating Michigan at home. So we'll see whether or not they can pull out that road win against the Huskers. Meghan McKeown, great stuff. Thanks so much. Have a great call tonight. Princeton and Columbia going outside the Big Ten. But we will see you in Indy next week.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Got 2 games for you tomorrow on the network. Naz Hillman and the Wolverines look to close in on that Big Ten title as they take on Michigan State. Then it is Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeyes against Rutgers, a Big Ten women's basketball doubleheader presented by Disney Parks tomorrow here on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Dramatic conclusion of our show next, talking some Big Ten awards as Andy will rejoin me. Stick around. Take a look at Andy's Big Ten Player of the Year contenders, 5 of them. And yes, we have 2 weeks left. You got them in alphabetical order here, Andy, to show no favorites. It's amazing you can make a case for any of these guys.
No, you really could. And the odd man out at this time, and I think he will stay out, is Trace Jackson Davis. You know, there's been times when I've had him in this group, but I'm feeling comfortable now. Purdue certainly wins the league, and he's had big shots. E.J. Liddell, efficiency-wise, certainly has been there. Keegan Murray, the way he's come on late in big games, you know, certainly last night as another example, and the win at Ohio State. But, you know, at this moment in time, I'm still leaning a little toward Johnny Davis based on his road wins, 37 at Purdue, 30 at Michigan State, coming at critical times for the Badgers, a team that was picked near the bottom of the league.
It is going to be really tough to make a choice for those of us who are fortunate enough to have a vote in this.
And can I just throw this at you?
Yeah.
There is a chance that you could have someone win Big Ten Player of the Year, I'll just say Kofi or Keegan Murray, and Johnny Davis win the Naismith Award.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's going to be unanimity in terms of who the best guy coming out of the league is. What about Coach of the Year? Pretty interesting as well. Again,
this is really tough too.
Candidates. Yeah.
Tom Izzo endorsed Fran McCaffrey last night.
Yes, he did.
So he's come on late run. Steve Peichel with obviously what they've done here lately, if they can get in. Brad Underwood's dealt with a ton of injuries. Matt Painter, you know, they're the favorites and they potentially could win. But once again, I feel like I'm leaning Greg Gard's way because they were picked 10th and they have a chance to win the league. And we'll see if that plays out. But, you know, this could all change in the next week and a half, but I would say at this moment in time, I might lean that way.
I think we have a tendency with Coach of the Year often to vote for the person whose team most exceeds expectations.
Yes.
And I think in that case, Greg Gard and Fran McCaffrey are probably the two you'd be talking about right now who are better than we thought they would be. And again, that doesn't diminish the accomplishments of all those other guys. You talk about Underwood in particular with everything they've been through. Freshman of the Year, where are you going there?
I'm going to lean right at the beginning where it is the alphabet and Malachi Branham. I have gone back and forth on this show with Max Krisky and Bryce McGowan's. Chucky Hepburn has to be on this list.
Yeah.
He has had a phenomenal freshman season, a real critical freshman season for the Badgers. Musa Diabate has come on lately, obviously not playing tonight, but Christie's been inconsistent. I think Malachi Branham has been maybe the most consistent freshman on a winning team. Bryce McGowan's has been the most consistent freshman, but I think I may have to go with the Ohio State Buckeyes.
That is the challenge for Bryce McGowan. He's 7-time Big Ten Freshman of the Week. I mean, he's had a phenomenal year, and it was amazing to watch him in person last night. He's incredibly talented, but Malachi Branham's the second best player on a really, really good team. So we'll be back to discuss lots of